Hi, everyone. Ben Jones here with Data Literacy. So, as you may know, I wrote a book about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, called Avoiding Data Pitfalls, where I tried to catalog my own journey of mistakes with data, so many that you can make, right? And so I wanted to kind of help people be aware of what they are so they maybe can avoid them. And so I want to do the same thing today with generative AI. Very powerful technology, but also very problematic. So I want to kind of point out five of the main pitfalls that I'm aware of so that you can maybe watch out for them as you are using these new technologies that we find all around us now. So, in a nutshell, number one, you can't ignore it. Okay. Number two, you can't fully trust it. Number three, you need to maintain what we call cognitive vigilance. So, more on that in a moment. Number four, your own words are still more powerful in many instances. And number five, you really need to learn to lean in right now and educate yourself about this technology. Now, it's just kind of fun to think back and reflect on, for me, almost 50 years now of life. And so it's just been an era of technological advancement from the personal computing revolution in the 80s, quickly followed by the spread of the internet in the 90s. Then we see mobile phones and social media spring up in the early 2000s. Data and data analytics become ubiquitous starting around 2010 and beyond. And now, of course, in the 2020s, we see AI changing everything all over again. So this can be super exciting. These new technologies bring with them lots of new possibilities and new opportunities, but it can also be terrifying because, this environment's shifting. That means we have to continually learn and adjust. It even means we have to let go of how things used to be. But another main source of anxiety caused by all this technological change is that we sort of kind of have this intuitive sense that we can sometimes get it wrong when we use these new tools. So new technologies with all their benefits come with many negative, often unintended consequences. And so we have to kind of find out what those pitfalls are, tell them to each other so we can avoid them. Okay, so number one, avoiding it or forbidding it entirely. So, you've got this technological adoption life cycle. You're familiar with it, right? Innovators, early adopters, early majority, then late majority, and laggards. So, there are good reasons to be in any point along this cycle, along this curve, depending on your situation, depending on your industry. So many reasons there, right? But some companies are deciding to totally stop any and all exploration into generative AI. And I think that that's a big mistake. Maybe fewer and fewer are doing that now as people are kind of starting to realize that this is, pretty much here to stay. But there are companies in certain industries even that are a little wary of adopting generative AI. Again, maybe for good reason. But, there's examples of engineers copying sensitive source code directly into, let's say, a cloud-based chatbot, resulting in a company-wide ban. That happened with Samsung back in 2023. And other companies followed suit. But the problem is if you totally ban it, the truth is your employees are going to use it anyway. You can even try to block it on company devices, but employees can always access it on their own devices, like personal laptops or their own mobile phones. There's even research from Salesforce back in 2023 that found that over half of global users of generative AI were using it without the formal approval of their employers. So, people are going to be using it. So the good news, though, is that these chatbots are starting to evolve. They have, many times now the abilities to opt out of having your chat session data used for model training purposes. Many organizations now are rolling out enterprise-grade versions with enhanced security and data privacy and administrative control features. So that's great. But the fact of the matter is, generative AI isn't going away, and your career and your business are probably going to suffer if you ignore it or ban it. So don't stick your head in the sand. Do develop an acceptable use policy for generative AI. Train employees on that policy. Educate them about the risks of violating it. And even if you have the resources, build your own enterprise-ready versions. You can layer right on top of some of the foundational models that are out there. Many of them are open source. And so I recommend you think about doing that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, accepting generative AI outputs uncritically. That is a huge, huge pitfall. Now, this is the one that if the first pitfall was one that laggards suffer from, Well, this pitfall is the one that the innovators and the early adopters are more likely to fall for. They're running ahead so fast, they don't even see the pitfall, they fall right into it. So we want to be careful about that. In our rush to adopt, you might fail to critically evaluate their outputs. So, we know about hallucinations, they're not going away. Yes, they're getting better, and maybe in some cases we can start to ourselves become aware of them, but you have to really watch out for it. Some of these outputs, they can be factually incorrect. They can even sometimes be nonsensical, otherwise out of touch with reality, even sometimes toxic. Okay, so this has been the case a lot of times with lawyers. These lawyers are getting in trouble. This is happening all over the world. Submitting legal briefs to the court that are referencing fictitious cases that ChatGPT, let's say, or one other chatbot came up with. And, they make excuses that they didn't know it was capable of that, but that's getting harder and harder to make that excuse now. But they're still finding out that hard way. We can see examples in New York and Australia, Wyoming, Alabama, and we're going to see more and more of that down the road. But it's not just lawyers that are falling into this pitfall. And it isn't just text. We see examples with images as well that are biased or that are incredibly flawed. I'm thinking of an example just back in April 2025 of a Chinese newspaper, the Sinchu Daily, printed an AI-generated image of the Malaysian flag on their front page. But the problem was the image of the flag omitted its signature crescent moon on the flag. That's a very critical shape from a political, cultural, and religious perspective. And many people were very upset about that. And actually, Malaysia's own education ministry made that exact same problem the same exact month. So we've got to watch out for this stuff. These kinds of flaws are everywhere to be found in the outputs of generative AI. So how to avoid it? Triple check everything it makes for you. Give yourself checklists to inspect for common types of errors or egregious kinds of errors that would not be okay if they made it out there to prime time. Okay. Number 3, over-reliance on generative AI outputs. It's a little different than missing the pitfalls because let's be honest, generative AI can produce great stuff for us, but we want to be careful about becoming overly reliant on it, becoming lazy, copy pasting, just not even bothering to think about it ourselves and just going for the immediate quick output. So we have to watch out for that. You have to think about something called de-skilling. Well, this is what happens when automation lowers the level of skill that humans in that space have going forward. You start to lose capabilities over time as you rely on the technology to do it for you. And so it isn't just about generative AI. We've seen this in factories as machines have been taking over tasks of skilled laborers. But now we're seeing de-skilling with knowledge workers. So what happens? Think about it. What happens when you no longer have to solve the problem yourself? What happens if you don't have to think about the words that you're trying to articulate? So that's a very real risk. Even some research is showing that students can be affected by this. They can become over-reliant on generative AI, and this can lead to what we call reduced cognitive engagement. They're just not even thinking about it anymore, just copy and pasting the essay, turning it in. They didn't learn anything. Cognitive offloading. That's something that's good in some cases, but again, we need to be careful about overdoing it. Don't become lazy mentally, metacognitively. Okay, so how do we avoid becoming over-reliant? Force yourself to turn away from it and go it alone. Or at least start by jotting down what you decide, what you'd create, or the words you would use, right? Either before or even maybe during the time when the tools are generating the outputs for you. In a word, exercise cognitive vigilance. You don't want your critical thinking skills to deteriorate, so keep using them. Number 4, a pitfall is to outsource genuine human sincerity. So, okay, it's one thing if you're turning to Gen AI for some kind of an analytical output or a technical deliverable. I don't know, maybe you're making an instruction manual or some summary of a bunch of meeting minutes. But what about when you turn to generative AI for drafting personal messages or to maybe articulate even more weighty matters of the heart? I would say you're treading on dangerous ground in those situations. So we see this popping up now and then on social media, screenshots of people who obviously used AI for some kind of sentimental communication because some snippet got included accidentally, like a time when a boss expressed concern about their employee's health, but they accidentally pasted the part of the AI response that said, "Do you want me to create a more casual or a more formal version of this for you?" It's like in the email. Ouch. That's cringy. It's a glaring faux pas, right? But we have to watch out for that. It's not just here or there. People are doing this all over the place. So how do you avoid that? Well, I would recommend actually totally avoiding outsourcing personal sentiments pretty much altogether. I mean, maybe you can use generative AI to think about what you could say or to get feedback on what you want to say, but I would even be careful with that. It's probably better just to talk to someone and get that feedback from a real person because there's a wide spectrum, isn't there, of sentimentality, and you have to decide where you want to draw that line. But if you're trying to say something genuine and heartfelt, I'd say just go with your own words. Even if they're not as eloquent, that's okay. They know the person on the other end is hearing from you, not your favorite chatbot. Okay, pitfall number 5 is failing to develop AI literacy. So this is a really hot topic right now, AI literacy. Even LinkedIn rated it number 1 on their inaugural Skills on the Rise report just a month or two ago. And even Europe is mandating that companies train their employees on AI literacy, right? So there's a reason for that. But the thing is, I think you can all agree that we're being asked to use this technology. It's powerful, but in some ways it's still very nascent. It's also very evolving very rapidly, and it's powerful and it's dangerous. So in that exact situation, you want to learn how to become more fluent in what it is, what it isn't, how to use it, how not to use it. And so that goes for the executives in your company. That goes for team members at every single level along the org chart. So how do you avoid being illiterate? Well, lean in and learn. However you learn. How do you learn the best? Reading books, listening to podcasts, taking online courses. Those are all great. Do those things, whichever ones work well for you. But maybe above all, roll up your sleeves and try it. Try it out. See what you get. See what it's like. Experience it. So I think that that's an important thing that companies should do and individuals should do. Really lean in to training themselves, educating themselves about the technologies, where they came from, not just generative AI, but the bigger picture of AI, what it's all about. Okay, so hey, good luck out there. When it comes to generative AI, well, of course, pitfalls abound. I try to share 5 of them that I think are something we need to be aware of. Gave you a little bit of my own humble advice for how to avoid them. I haven't always avoided those pitfalls myself. I probably will fall into them and others down the road, but hey, I'm trying really hard to avoid them going forward. All right, with that, contact us if you have any questions or thoughts about this or about training. And with that, I wish you all the best. All right, everyone, take care. Talk to you next time.